He had faced countless enemies across the galaxy, always coming out victorious. His race, the Viewership, was feared by all, and their technology was unmatched. Their weapons were powerful, and their warriors were trained for every kind of battle. But this time, Kaler's mission would be different. His team was sent to a planet far from their home. This planet Earth was controlled by humans, a species the Viewership had heard of, but never truly respected. The humans were small, weak, and their technology was primitive compared to the advanced weapons and ships the Viewership possessed. Kaler's mission was simple: to eliminate any resistance from the human forces and claim the planet's resources for the Viewership. The team of 10 Viewership warriors arrived on the planet's surface, their ships cloaking as they descended through the atmosphere. Kaler led the group, his eyes scanning the alien world below. The terrain was lush with dense forests and towering trees. There were no signs of human settlements in the immediate area, which made Kaler feel confident. The planet seemed peaceful, quiet, and unaware of the danger approaching. "Prepare for landing," Kaler ordered through his communicator. His voice was calm but firm, showing no fear. The team's ships touched down in a clearing, their engines humming softly as they powered down. Kaler stepped out of the ship, his boots crunching the leaves beneath him. The air smelled fresh and cool, a stark contrast to the smoky, metal-heavy air of the Viewership's homeworld. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows. "On the ground, this place is nothing like our world," said Kor, one of the younger warriors, scanning the horizon with his weapon raised. Kaler nodded. "The humans will not be a problem. We are superior in every way." The team spread out into the forest, moving in formation. Kaler led the way, his keen senses picking up every sound and movement. He could hear the distant chirping of creatures, the rustle of leaves in the wind. But there were no signs of human life. No vehicles, no buildings, no people. The silence was almost unsettling. As they moved deeper into the forest, they noticed small signs of human presence. Footprints in the mud, broken branches, and a few scattered pieces of technology, simple tools, nothing extraordinary. Kaler's confidence grew. This would be an easy mission. The humans, with their weak bodies and primitive weapons, were no match for the Viewership warriors. But something wasn't right. Kaler couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The air felt heavier now, as if something unseen was lurking just beyond the trees. His instincts, honed through years of battle, were warning him, but he brushed it off. This was just a strange world. There was no reason to worry. "Stay alert," Kaler commanded. His voice was low, but the others could hear the tension. In it, the humans may be hiding. They pressed forward, their weapons ready. The deeper they went into the forest, the more uncomfortable Kaler felt. The feeling of being watched grew stronger, and the quiet became deafening. The usual sounds of the forest chirping birds, rustling leaves had faded away. Even the wind seemed to stop blowing. Then suddenly, there was a sharp crack in the distance. Kaler's head snapped in the direction of the sound. He raised his weapon, ready for anything. "What was that?" Kor whispered, his voice tight with unease. "I don't know," Kaler replied. "But be ready." They moved forward, more cautiously now. The silence felt like a pressure, pressing in on them from all sides. Kaler's sharp eyes scanned the trees, every movement on the ground, every flicker in the distance. But all he could see were the towering trees and thick brush. Then it happened. A blinding flash of light and a loud, high-pitched whine filled the air. Kaler's eyes widened in surprise as he barely ducked behind a tree. The sound of a shot echoed through the forest. His armor absorbed the impact, but the force of the blow sent him stumbling back. "Get down!" Kaler yelled, pulling his team into cover. The others scrambled, seeking the safety of the trees. Another shot rang out, and one of the warriors, Tarek, fell to the ground, his body twitching as he went limp. Kaler's eyes went wide. The human sniper had already made his move. "How did they find us?" Kor asked, his voice panicked. "How could they be so fast?" Kaler clenched his fists. "It doesn't matter. We'll find them and destroy them." The team spread out in search of the sniper, but the forest seemed to close in around them. Every rustle in the leaves, every distant snap of a branch made them tense. It was as if the sniper knew exactly where to strike. Their superior strength, their advanced technology, it all seemed useless against this unseen enemy. Kaler's mind raced as he searched for the sniper's location. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being toyed with. The sniper was in control. He knew where they were, but they couldn't see him. And then it hit Kaler. This was not just any sniper. This human was no ordinary soldier. He was a ghost, a phantom moving through the trees, striking without warning and vanishing without a trace. The humans had something Kaler and his warriors could not understand. This is not what we expected. Kaler muttered under his breath. His team was struggling, and his confidence was beginning to crack. The humans were not as weak as they had assumed. We must find him, or we will fall, Kaler said, his voice cold, but filled with determination. The hunt was on. The Viewership warriors, the greatest soldiers in the galaxy, were now the prey. And they had no idea how dangerous their enemy truly was. The sniper wasn't just a man with a gun. He was a force of nature, and Kaler was about to learn that humans were far more deadly than anyone had ever realized. What seemed like safe cover now felt like prisons. Kaler's mind raced as he tried to make sense of what had just happened. Tarek's lifeless body lay on the ground, and the Viewership warriors, who had once been so confident, were now shaken, uncertain, and afraid. They had been attacked not by an army, but by a single human one that had appeared out of nowhere and killed one of their own with terrifying precision. Kaler stood tall, his hand gripping his weapon, his eyes scanning the surrounding trees. The others were close behind, moving in silence. Every step felt too loud in the stillness. They were hunters, but they were being hunted. "I don't understand," Kor said, his voice low and full of confusion. "How could one human do this? We have the best weapons, the strongest armor, ... Kaler silenced him with a sharp look. "It doesn't matter. Focus. We need to find the human before he kills more of us." The team spread out, moving cautiously through the trees. Kaler's mind was focused on one thing: survival. Had been in countless battles across the galaxy, but never had he encountered an enemy like this. A single human had taken down one of their strongest warriors without them even seeing it coming. It was almost like the sniper had been waiting for them, as if the very air around them had been listening, and the sniper had read their every move before they even made it. The thought was unsettling. Kaler wasn't used to being caught off guard. He had led countless missions and survived the deadliest of enemies. But now, the stakes were higher. They weren't fighting a race with superior technology or brute strength. They were fighting a ghost. Another crack of a twig echoed through the trees, making the warriors tense. Kaler's heart raced, but he kept his focus. He motioned for Kor to move forward, staying low and quiet. The forest felt alive with danger, and every movement could be the last. "Stay together," Kaler whispered through the cums. "We need to cover every angle." The team was on edge, every warrior's eyes darting between the trees, looking for any sign of the sniper. But the silence was deafening, and the only thing they could hear was their own breathing and the distant of the forest. Then it came again, a high-pitched whine, followed by a crack. Another shot. This time it was closer. The warrior named Tharn dropped to the ground, a bullet grazing his armor and sending sparks flying. He was lucky, but the sniper was getting closer. He needed to act fast. Kaler's grip tightened. Around his weapon, he knew they had to find the human sniper and end this before it was too late. But the forest seemed endless, the trees too dense to see beyond a few feet. The human was playing on their weakness, using the environment to his advantage. Every time they thought they had him cornered, he slipped away, as if he had never been there at all. "Why aren't we seeing him?" Kor asked, his voice barely a whisper. Kaler didn't answer immediately. His mind was racing, because he's too skilled. Knows how to hide, how to move without being detected. We're out of our element here. The warriors continued their search, moving deeper into the forest. Every step felt heavier, every branch snapping beneath their feet, sounding like a thunderclap in the silence. They were walking right into the sniper's trap, and they knew it. Suddenly, Kaler stopped. His instincts screamed at him to freeze. He wasn't sure why, but something told him they were close. Too close. Hold position, Kaler ordered. His voice was calm, but inside, his pulse was racing. The human was near. The team stopped, crouching behind trees and rocks, their weapons raised. Kaler scanned the surroundings, trying to listen for any sounds that would give the sniper away. The seconds ticked by, feeling like hours. Forest was still. Too still. Then it happened. A shadow darted across the edge of Kaler's vision. He whipped around, raising his weapon. But it was too late. A shot rang out, and one of the warriors' Rallick collapsed to the ground, a red streak appearing across his chest. The sniper was faster than Kaler could react. No, Kor shouted, running to Rallick's side. But it was too late. Rallick was already gone, his body lifeless. Kaler's anger flared. He couldn't let this happen. Not again. The human was out there, hiding in the shadows, picking them off one by one. They had to stop him or they would all die here. Form up, Kaler ordered. His voice was fierce now, filled with the fire of a warrior who would not give up. We're not dying today. We will find him. But even as he said the words, Kaler knew it wasn't going to be easy. The human sniper had shown them just how dangerous he could be. And they still had no idea how many more of them the human had killed, or how far his reach was. The warriors moved forward, more determined now than ever. But the silence of the forest, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees, and the occasional snap of a branch were the only signs they had of the sniper's presence. He was everywhere and nowhere at once. A phantom who could strike without warning and vanish just as quickly. Kaler's thoughts turned to their mission. They had come here to conquer, to show the humans their superiority. But now, the tables had turned. The Viewership were no longer the hunters. They were the prey, and the human sniper was the one who was in control. As though the very air was holding its breath. Kaler's senses were on high alert, but the calmness of the surroundings was deceptive. His warriors were weary, their nerves stretched thin after days of hiding, searching, and surviving. They had seen what the human sniper could do. They had watched their comrades fall, picked off one by one without warning. Kaler moved carefully, his steps light, his weapon raised. He could hear the distant hum of the forest, the breeze swaying the branches, the rustling of leaves, but nothing else. No sounds of animals, no distant chatter of human activity, just the stillness. It felt unnatural. He glanced over his shoulder at his remaining team. Kor and Tharn were the only two still standing. The others had either fallen or scattered in the search for cover. Even the bravest of the Viewership warriors now felt the weight of the unknown. The human sniper had already proven that he could strike at any time, from anywhere. Stay focused, Kaler said in a low voice. He's here, watching us. We need to find him before we lose more. Kor nodded, but his eyes were filled with uncertainty. He was young, eager to prove himself, but the events of the past few days had shaken him to his core. Tharn, too, had grown quiet, his usual bravado replaced by a grim seriousness. They had all underestimated the human, thinking him weak, thinking the mission would be easy. But now they understood just how wrong they were. Kaler pushed forward, trying to push down the rising panic that clawed at his chest. The forest seemed to close in around them, the trees becoming an endless maze. Every step they took felt like they were walking deeper into a trap. The human sniper was playing them, turning the very environment into a weapon. Kaler motioned for Kor and Tharn to fan out. They had to find him. If they could catch the human, they could end this madness. But how? The sniper was too skilled. Too silent, they couldn't even be sure where to start looking. Be careful, Kaler warned, his voice barely a whisper. They spread out, staying close but trying to cover as much ground as possible. The forest was dense, and the shadows played tricks on their eyes. Every flicker of movement seemed like a threat. Every shadow felt like it was hiding something. They moved carefully, using the trees for cover, their weapons at the ready. Kaler's mind raced, He was no stranger to danger, no stranger to hunting down enemies in unfamiliar territory. But this was different. This wasn't a battle of strength or weapons. This was a battle of minds. The human sniper was playing a game with them, and so far he was winning. Another crack of a branch echoed through the trees, and Kaler's heart skipped a beat. It wasn't the sniper. It was Kor, his foot hitting a branch as he tried to move stealthily. Kaler shot him a quick glance, warning him to be quieter. The tension was unbearable. Kaler could feel the sweat on the back of his neck, the tightness in his chest. His sharp eyes scanned every corner of the forest, every movement in the distance. They were close. He could feel it. And then, just as Kaler thought they might have a chance, it happened again. A sudden sharp noise broke the silence. It was the sound of a twig snapping underfoot. The three warriors froze, their bodies stiff with fear. That was no accident. Someone or something was out there. Kaler raised his weapon, his eyes scanning the area, searching for any hint of movement. But the trees stood still. The air hung thick with tension, but nothing moved. Kaler cursed under his breath. The sniper had already heard them. He was too quick, too precise. They couldn't even hear him move. We need to draw him out. Kaler muttered. Korr nodded slowly. How do we do that? Kaler thought for a moment. They couldn't stay hidden forever. If they kept running and hiding, they would never find the human. They had to take the fight to him. Let's split up, Kaler said. We'll create a diversion. Force him to reveal himself. Kor and Tharn exchanged nervous glances, but they nodded. They had no other choice. Human Sniper had already shown that he was the one in control, and if they didn't take action now, they would all be lost. Kaler moved off to the right, trying to stay hidden in the trees. Kor went left, and Tharn stayed in the center. They weren't far apart, but they kept their distance to confuse the sniper. Kaler tried to stay calm as he moved, every step measured, every breath controlled. He knew the human was watching, but where? Now, Kaler whispered. Korr stepped forward, making noise intentionally. He cracked a branch beneath his boot and shouted, "I've found him, he's here." Kaler's heart raced as he waited for the human to make his move. They had done their part. Now they just had to hope it worked. The silence stretched on. No sound, no movement, nothing. Is he? Tharn started to ask, but then it happened. A shot rang out, and Tharn collapsed. The bullet tore through his armor, and he hit the ground hard. Kaler's blood ran cold. The sniper had taken the bait, but it wasn't the trap Kaler had hoped for. The human sniper was still out there, waiting, watching. And now they had lost another warrior. Kaler gritted his teeth and aimed his weapon, ready for the next move. The hunter was now the hunted. He wouldn't make the same mistake again, but the human sniper had already won. He had forced them to show their hand, and Kaler knew that the only way to survive was to keep fighting, no matter what, no matter how many warriors fell. Body of Tharn. The young warrior had been their last hope of gaining an upper hand, and now he was gone. The human sniper had struck again, taking one more life without giving them a chance to fight back. The alien warrior's mind raced, trying to figure out how to win. The Viewership had always prided themselves on their ability to conquer and destroy, but against this one human, they were helpless. Kaler looked at Kor, who stood nearby, his eyes wide with fear and anger. Kor had always been eager to prove himself, but the constant threat of the sniper had pushed him to his breaking point. Kaler knew that if they didn't act soon, Kor would be the next to fall. "We can't keep running," Kaler said in a low voice, his tone hard. "We need to take the fight to him." Kor nodded but said nothing. That he had grown quiet over. The past few hours, the weight of their losses starting to wear him down. Kaler could see the fear in his eyes, and it made his own anger burn even hotter. This human sniper had turned everything upside down. The mighty Viewership, the greatest warriors in the galaxy, were now the ones being hunted. Kaler tightened his grip on his weapon and turned to the others. "We move as one. No more distractions. We find him and end this." They had no choice. The sniper had already shown that he could take them down one by one. The Virox warriors had fought armies, destroyed entire fleets, and conquered planets. But none of their skills had prepared them for this. One human, using nothing but stealth, had taken out 4 of their best soldiers. Kaler had underestimated the human, and now it was costing them dearly. Kaler motioned for Kor to move with him as he began to move through the dense underbrush. They needed to find cover, some way to draw the sniper out. There was no more running. It was time for a final confrontation. The forest seemed to be closing in around them as they moved cautiously, every step measured. The trees loomed overhead like towering giants, casting shadows that made it difficult to see. Kaler's eyes darted between the trees, watching for any sign of movement, any glimpse of the human. His mind raced as he considered their options. The sniper was good to good, but Kaler was determined. He had been in worse situations before. Dandy wasn't about to let a single human bring down the Virox. Suddenly there was a rustling in the leaves behind them. Kaler's heart skipped a beat, and he spun around, aiming his weapon in the direction of the sound. Kor followed suit, both warriors ready for anything, but it was only a small animal scurrying across the ground. Kaler let out a breath. He hadn't realized he was holding and looked at Kor. "Stay focused." Kor nodded, his grip on his weapon tightening. Kaler could see the fear in his eyes, but also something else's determination. Despite everything, Kor was ready to fight. That was the spirit Kaler needed. They pressed on, moving through the forest at a faster pace. Kaler's instincts told him that the sniper wasn't far, that he was watching them, waiting for them to make a mistake. And that was exactly what Kaler was going to do. Make the human make a mistake? They couldn't afford to keep running. The Virox were the greatest warriors in the galaxy, and Kaler would not let one human take that from them. As they moved deeper into the forest, Kaler began to formulate a plan. They needed to use the terrain to their advantage, draw the sniper out of hiding, and force him into the open. Kaler wasn't sure if it would work, but it was their only option. He stopped and crouched behind a large boulder, signaling for Kor to do the same. "We need to create a distraction," Kaler said, his voice low but steady. "Make noise. Draw him in. I'll take the shot." Kor nodded and moved away, taking up a position on the other side of the clearing. Kaler's plan was simple: create enough chaos to confuse the sniper, and then catch him off guard. The Virox had superior technology, but the sniper had the element of surprise. If they could turn the tables and force the human to reveal himself, they might just have a chance. Kor stepped into the open, intentionally making noise as he moved. He cracked branches beneath his boots and shouted into the trees, hoping to lure the sniper out. Kaler stayed hidden, his weapon trained on the area where he suspected the sniper would appear. The seconds felt like hours as Kaler waited. He could hear Kor shouting again, making more noise to cover his movements. Kaler's eyes narrowed. He knew the sniper was out there waiting. The human had to be close. And when he made his move, Kaler would be ready. The wind shifted, and Kaler caught a glimpse of something in the trees. A flash of movement, a brief silhouette. The human had made his move. Kaler raised his weapon, but before he could take the shot, another loud crack rang out. Kor fell to the ground, his body jerking as the bullet struck him. Kaler's heart sank. The sniper had been faster. Once again, they had underestimated the human's skill. But Kaler wasn't done. He had lost more than enough warriors. To this sniper would not let him take another one. With a roar of anger, Kaler broke from cover and charged forward, his weapon raised. He moved with the speed and power of a warrior who had nothing left to lose. The human was out there, and he would face the full force of the Virox. The battle was far from over. The human sniper might have outsmarted them so far, but now it was Kaler's turn to hunt. His eyes burned with rage, and his hands clenched tightly around his weapon. Kor's body was still lying in the clearing, and Kaler could feel the anger rising in him like a tidal wave. Human sniper had taken so much from them. But now, Kaler was determined to take it back. He could hear the soft crackle of leaves and twigs beneath his feet as he moved. Every step felt like it might be his last, but he couldn't stop. His focus was clear. He would hunt down the sniper, and this time he would not miss. The forest around him was thick. The trees closed together, creating a labyrinth of shadows and uncertainty. But Kaler was not about to let fear stop him. His people had always been the hunters, the strongest, the smartest. This human, this mere mortal, had made them feel like prey. Kaler would make sure that would never happen again. He slowed his pace, keeping his body low to the ground. His eyes flicked to every shadow, every movement in the distance. He had to be careful. The human sniper had proven that he could appear out of nowhere and strike with deadly accuracy. Kaler was running out of warriors, and he wasn't about to let the human take him down next. As Kaler moved through the forest, the silence weighed on him. There were no sounds of the usual forest life, no animals rustling in the bushes, no birds calling out from the trees. It was as if the very world around him had become an enemy, conspiring against him. Then, suddenly there was a sound, a soft snap of a branch in the distance. Kaler's heart skipped a beat. He froze, his body going still as a rock. The human sniper was close, very close. Kaler's eyes scanned the area in front of him, watching for any hint of movement. He couldn't see the human, but he could feel his presence like a shadow hanging over him. The human was a master at hiding, and Kaler knew he had to be quick. A soft rustling behind him made Kaler whirl around, his weapon raised and ready. But it was just the wind, making the trees sway in the breeze. Kaler cursed under his breath. His nerves were on edge, and he couldn't afford to make any more mistakes. He moved forward, his footsteps quieter now. Mistakes. The human was too fast, too clever. He couldn't afford to rush in again. He had to be patient, to let the human make the first move. The seconds felt like minutes. Kaler's muscles tensed with every creak of a branch or rustle of leaves. He could feel the human's eyes on him, studying him, waiting for the right moment to strike. Then he heard a soft worry sound, the unmistakable sound of a projectile cutting through the air. Kaler barely had time to react before he felt a sharp pain in his shoulder. The bullet had grazed his armor, but the impact still sent him stumbling backward. He had been too slow. Kaler's anger flared. This time he was ready, whipped around and fired in the direction of the shot, but the sniper was already gone, vanishing into the trees like a ghost. The human was playing with him, leading him on a chase that Kaler wasn't sure he could win. The pain in his shoulder throbbed, but Kaler ignored it. He had to focus. His warriors were gone, and now it was just him and the human. It was a battle of wills. And Kaler wasn't about to let a single human take him down. He sprinted through the trees, moving faster now, listening for any sound that might give away the sniper's position. The forest was vast, but Kaler had the advantage of experience. He'd hunted creatures far more dangerous than this human. He wasn't about to let this one be the end of him. Then, just as Kaler was about to lose hope, he saw a flash of movement. A shadow darted between the trees, just out of reach. He turned toward it, his eyes narrowing. The human was close, closer than ever. Kaler could feel it in his bones. He crept forward, trying to make as little noise as possible. His body was on edge, every muscle ready to spring into action. He had only one shot at this. If he missed, the human would be gone, and Kaler would be alone in the forest. A failure. Kaler's heart beat in his chest like a war drum as he drew closer to the spot where the human had vanished. He could hear his breathing, shallow, but steady. He had trained himself to control his fear, to block out the distractions and focus on the hunt. Then, with a sudden rush of adrenaline, Kaler broke through the trees and into a small clearing. And there he was. The human sniper stood in the center of the clearing, his back to Kaler, his weapon raised. But he wasn't aiming at Kaler. He was looking down at someone, perhaps. Kaler's eyes flicked to the ground. Where a small object lay, it was Kor's weapon. The human had been waiting for Kaler to approach, hoping to catch him off guard. But Kaler wasn't about to let that happen. He raised his weapon and fired, the shot ringing through the air. The human spun around, his eyes wide with shock as he tried to raise his rifle. But it was too late. Kaler's shot struck true, hitting the human square in the chest. The sniper staggered back, his eyes wide with disbelief as he collapsed to the ground. Kaler stood over him, his weapon still raised, his chest heaving with exhaustion and triumph. The human had been a formidable opponent, but in the end, was Kaler who had won. The battle was over. But Kaler couldn't shake the feeling that he had learned something that would haunt him forever. Humans were more dangerous than he had ever imagined, and this encounter was just the beginning. The forest around him was eerily silent, the trees standing like silent witnesses to the battle that had just taken place. The human lay still on the ground, the life drained from his body, his rifle lying just out of reach. Kaler's weapon was still raised, but his mind was racing. He had won the fight. Yes, but something in the back of his mind told him that the battle wasn't really over. The human had been a ghost in the forest, a phantom that had moved without making a sound, a deadly force that had turned the Vierox's confidence into doubt. It wasn't just a battle of strength. It had been a test of who could outlast the other, and for a time, the human had been winning. Kaler looked down at the sniper's body. The human had been small, barely half the size of Kaler, yet, in the end, it wasn't size or strength that had mattered. It was skill, precision, and an uncanny ability to remain calm under pressure. The Vierox had relied on their technology and raw power to win battles, but against the human that had been meaningless. What was he? Kaler whispered to himself. His mind wandered back to the beginning. When they had landed on this planet, thinking it would be another easy conquest, they had underestimated the humans. They had expected a primitive species, something they could crush with ease. Instead, they had found themselves up against something they couldn't predict. A single human had made them feel like prey. It was an unsettling feeling. Kaler knelt down beside the sniper's body and examined it more closely. There were no signs of weakness or fear in the human's expression. In fact, the sniper seemed almost peaceful in his final moments, as if he had known exactly what was going to happen. Kaler couldn't shake the thought that this human was different. The way he had moved, the way he had planned every shot, they were not the actions of a regular soldier. The thought bothered Kaler more than he cared to admit. He had faced countless enemies, each more dangerous than the last, but none had made him question his own abilities. None had made him feel so helpless, so vulnerable. And now, after everything, he was left standing in the forest, victorious, but uneasy. The sound of footsteps behind him broke his concentration. Kaler turned sharply, his weapon ready. But it was only Kor who had managed to survive the encounter. His face was covered in dirt, and his armor was scratched and battered, but he was alive. That was more than Kaler could say for most. Of the team, you did it, Kaler, Kor said, his voice hoarse but filled with relief. You finally killed him. Kaler didn't respond immediately. He stood up, his eyes still on the sniper's body. Kor's words were true, but something didn't sit right with Kaler. He had defeated the human, yes, but it hadn't been easy. The human had almost destroyed them, and in the process, Kaler had learned something about himself and his people. Kor stepped forward, glancing at the sniper's body. What happens now? Kaler hesitated for a moment. We go back. To the ship, the mission is complete. Kor nodded, but Kaler could see the questions in his eyes. They had both witnessed something they couldn't explain. A single human had done what entire armies couldn't. Kaler had been forced to adapt, to think differently. And in the end, that had been what saved him. The human sniper had made him realize that strength wasn't always enough. Sometimes, it took something more. The two warriors made their way back to the ship, leaving the fallen sniper behind. As they walked through the dense forest, Kaler's thoughts were heavy. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just an isolated incident. If a single human could cause so much destruction, what would an entire army of them be capable of? The thought chilled him to his core. The Vierox had always been the dominant force in the galaxy. They had conquered countless worlds and defeated every enemy that had come their way. But now, for the first time, Kaler wasn't so sure. He had faced the human sniper, and it had changed him. Humans were not the weak species the Viewership had believed them to be. They were something else, something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. As the ship's engines roared to life, Kaler sat in silence, staring out at the stars. Kor was beside him, still processing what had happened. Kaler couldn't shake the feeling that the war with humanity was far from over. This was just the beginning. The human sniper had been just one of many. And Kaler knew, deep down, that if humanity ever decided to unite, they would be a force unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The Viewership might have won the battle, but Kaler knew that humans were out there, watching, learning, waiting for the next opportunity to strike. And this time, they wouldn't make the same mistake again.